Welcome to Ellehsemcg Guitars. I'm Derek, and this is the Jefferson Bourbon Barrel top guitar build, and this will be chapter 7. This chapter is about installing the neck into the body.
Evaluation, confidential marketing, and vetting potential buyers. With over 22 years of industry experience and a national reputation as an elite boutique firm attracting top professionals, Capital's M&A advisors help you achieve price for your business in the shortest cycle time. Our multilingual M&A specialists operate on a unique team concept.
Here I'm checking to make sure that the neck is set in the body correctly, so making sure the depth is correct for the height of the string to the bridge, and then also checking the scale length.
Thorough research. We understand the importance of discretion, maintaining confidentiality, and thereby preventing business upheaval. Don't let the complexities of selling your business overwhelm you. Contact our M&A advisors by calling 954-596.
You know what? Maybe another quick hit of that Obama charm for a sec.
We believe that true freedom gives each of us the right to make decisions about our own life. How we worship, what our family looks like, how many kids we have, who we marry. And we believe that freedom requires us to recognize that other people have the freedom to make choices that are different than ours. That's okay.
That's the good stuff, you know? Inject that hope and changey shit into my veins. Whoa! You know, but I can't just get high off these guys. Off, you know? Yeah. Trying to call Kamala for a date.
I got Kamala's voicemail, and I just started rambling. Hey, it's Doug.
Yeah. That sure is a dog. That's a dog. That is a dog.
You can see this takes quite a bit. I'm just going back and forth until I know that the height is right, the depth of the pocket is right. Here I'm drilling the output jack hole.
Become part of it. Winston had recovered. It is impossible. Why? It is impossible to found a civilization on fear and hatred and cruelty. It would never endure. Why should it be? And if it were shape, that is, a single easily pronounced word with the same...
Here I've done a test fit for clamping, and now it's time for the real thing.
Ministry of Truth, for example, the records department in which Winston Smith worked was called RecDep. The fiction department was called FicDep. The teleprograms department was called TeleDep. And so on. This was not done solely with the object of saving time. Even in the early decades of the 20th century, telescoped words and phrases had been one of the characteristic features of political language, and it had been noticed that the tendency to use abbreviations of this kind was most marked in totalitarian countries and totalitarian organizations. Examples were such words as Nazi, Gestapo, Comintern, Imprecaur, Agitprop. In the beginning, the practice had been adopted as it were instinctive. In Newspeak, it was used with a conscious purpose. It was perceived that in thus abbreviating a name, one narrowed and subtly, by cutting out most of the associations that would otherwise cling to it. The words Communist Internationals call up a composite picture of universal human brotherhood, red flags, barricades, Karl Marx, and the Paris Commune. The word Comintern, on the other hand, suggests merely a tightly knit organization and a well-defined body of doctrine. It refers to something almost as easily recognized and as limited in purpose as a chair or a table. Comintern is a word that can be uttered almost without taking thought, whereas Communist International is a phrase over which one is obliged to linger, at least momentarily. In the same way, these by a word like Minitroop are fewer and more controllable than those called up by Ministry of Truth. This accounted not only for the habit of abbreviating whenever possible, but also for the almost exaggerated care that was taken to make every word easily pronounceable. In Newspeak, euphony outweighed every consideration other than exactitude of meaning. Regularity of grammar was always sacrificed to it when it seemed necessary, and rightly so, since what above all for political purposes was short-clipped words of unmistakable.
Here I'm making sure I have a thin layer of glue on all of the surfaces, and this is tight bound.
The words of the beaver gained in force from the fact that nearly all of them were very much alike. Almost invariably these words, good think, proly feed, sex crime, joy camp, ingsoc, belly feel, think pole, and countless others, were words of 2 or 3 syllables, with the stress distributed equally between the first syllable and the last. The use of them encouraged a gabbling style of speech, at once staccato and monotonous. And this was exactly what was aimed at. The intention was to make speech, and especially speech on any subject not ideologically neutral, as nearly as possible independent of consciousness. For the purposes of everyday life, it was no doubt necessary, or sometimes necessary, to reflect before speaking. But a party to make a political or ethical judgment should be able to spray forth the correct opinions, as automatically as a machine gun spraying forth bullets. His training fitted him to do this. The language gave him an almost foolproof instrument, and the texture of the words, with their harsh sound and a certain willful ugliness which was in accord with the spirit of ingsoc, assisted the process still further. So did the fact of having very few words to choose from. Relative to our own, the Newspeak vocabulary was tiny, and new ways of reducing it were constantly being devised. Newspeak indeed differed from most all other languages in that its vocabulary grew smaller instead of larger every year. Each reduction was a gain, since the smaller the area of choice, the smaller the temptation to take thought. Ultimately, it was hoped to make articulate speech issue from the larynx without involving the higher brain centers at all. This aim was frankly admitted in the Newspeak word duckspeak, meaning to quack like a duck. Like various other words in the B vocabulary, duckspeak was ambivalent in meaning, provided that the opinions which were quacked out were orthodox ones. It implied nothing but praise, and when The Times referred to one of the orators of the party as a double plus good duck speaker, it was paying a warm and valued compliment. The C vocabulary. The C vocabulary was supplementary to the others, and consisted entirely of scientific and technical terms. These resembled the scientific terms in use today, and were constructed from the same roots. But the usual
Here I'm just trying to get all of the glue cleaned up around the neck joint so I don't have issues later.
Followed the same grammatical rules as the words in the other 2 vocabularies. Very few of the C words had any currency, either in everyday speech or in political speech. Any Any scientific worker or technician could find all the words he needed in the list devoted to his own speciality, but he seldom had more than a smattering of the words occurring in the other lists. Only a very few words were common to all lists, and there was no vocabulary expressing the function of science as a habit of mind, or a method of thought, irrespective of its particular branches. There was indeed no word for science, any meaning that it could possibly bear being already sufficiently covered by the word ingsoc. From the foregoing account, it will be seen that in Newspeak, the expression of unorthodox opinions, above a very low level, was well nigh impossible. It was of course possible to utter heresies of a very crude kind, a species of blasphemy. It would have been possible, for example, to say, Big Brother is ungood. But this statement, which to an orthodox ear merely conveyed a self-evident absurdity, could not have been sustained by reasoned argument, because the necessary words were not available. Ideas inimical to ingsoc could only be entertained in a vague, wordless form, and could only be named in very broad terms, which lumped together and condemned whole groups of heresies, without defining them in doing so. One could, in fact, only use Newspeak for unorthodox purposes, by illegitimately translating some of the words back into Old Speak. For example, all mans are equal was a possible Newspeak sentence, but only in the same sense in which all men are red-haired is a possible Old Speak sentence. It did not contain a grammatical error, but it expressed a palpable untruth. That is, that all men are of equal size, weight, or strength. The concept of political equality no longer existed.
I've let this sit overnight, so time to remove the clamps.
Something that, we're having the body made overseas and then we're getting it here. Everything's done here in our factory.
Here I'm pre-drilling the pickup cavities, so just to remove some of the waste, and then I'll put the template back on and route out the pickup pockets. I'd like to thank you all for watching Jefferson's Bourbon Barrel top guitar build. This was Chapter 7. Chapter 8 will be coming up soon. So I'd like to thank you all again for watching. I appreciate it, and see ya.